I ended the last part of my video by raising the obvious objection that a lot of people will have. And they'll say that, hey, wait a second, you can't judge Islam by what Abu Usama has to say. What he said is not Islamic. It doesn't follow the spirit or the teachings of Islam. And you shouldn't base your idea of what Sharia would look like upon what he says. Okay, fair enough. Now, I know some people will say that if Sharia is implemented wisely and justly, it can bring about a utopia, the most perfect of societies. The thing is, the most relevant question is not, can Sharia law bring about a perfect society if those who run it have a clear understanding of what God intended and followed Sharia to the letter and implemented it wisely. For argument's sake, let's assume that it can bring about a utopia if implemented wisely. The really relevant question should be, what reason is there to believe that those running a theocratic state will always have a solid knowledge of how God intended Sharia law to be applied, and that they will have the honor and integrity to enforce Sharia justly? Does Sharia law suffer from the ease with which it can be used by ruthless dictators to establish a dystopia, where criticism of Allah and Muhammad is not permitted? Where, by extension, criticism of the state and its policies is outlawed, since to criticize the state would be defined as criticizing an instrument of Allah? Would there be guarantees for freedom of religion for those who are practicing minor religions? Of course, Judaism and Christianity, as mentioned, would be protected. But would Catholics be able to get wine for their ceremonies? I noticed in the comment of one of Snow's videos, he mentioned that right now there are no countries practicing true Sharia law. The closest that would come to it is Saudi Arabia. Now, if this is what true Sharia law even approximates, it's kind of scary. And I'll post a couple of links in the sidebar. You can see that women are treated so unequally, they're not even allowed to drive cars. They just earned the right to sell cars in places where only women can congregate. They can now sell cars, but they still can't drive them. So if that's even beginning to look what Sharia looks like, that's kind of a scary sort of thing. Now, a long time ago I started this video as an explanation as to why people like CapnOAwesome and Fakesagan were desecrating the Koran. And let's return to that question. The way I see it, and they can speak for themselves if I'm misrepresenting them, but the way I see it is, it's a celebration that we have a right to insult a religion. It's their way of celebrating that everyone has a right to practice their religion, or no religion at all. It's a celebration that women have the right to choose as to whether to cover themselves or not, and who they can associate with, whether male or female, whether they're supervised or not. It's also a celebration that gays don't have to worry about being slaughtered en masse. And even if you don't like gays and despise your lifestyle, remember that they are like the canaries in a coal mine. When they are slaughtered, if the government finds it permissible to slaughter them, then it will find it much easier to slaughter others, particularly critics of their policies. So, as I see it, they're spitting on the Quran, and they're burning, or they're flushing it down the toilet, is their way of celebrating that the evils of a dystopia haven't visited us yet. Now, as I mentioned before, it doesn't matter that following Sharia as it was intended by God could be the basis of utopia. It doesn't matter that none of the nightmare scenarios that I outlined would occur if Sharia would be implemented wisely and justly. It really doesn't even matter if you could point to a society sometime in the past where Sharia was implemented and all was well. What does matter is that any Islamic state implementing Sharia will be run by humans. Some may be good and wise, But sooner or later, someone will come into power with either a flawed misunderstanding of Sharia or an evil nature that would abuse Sharia to suppress the people. There will be no protection against an evil government that justifies its actions based on the interpretation of God's will. George Orwell had communism in mind when he wrote 1984. But I'm sure if he were alive today, he would look at Saudi Arabia and Iran, and he would write a book about an Islamic society where those who oppose the state would suffer a boot in the face forever. And it's for this reason, I suspect, that Fakesagan and CapnOAwesome defile the Koran. They fear, as do I, the great potential that an Islamic state could turn into a nightmare state. And their spitting into the Koran is a celebration and a demonstration that that has not happened here yet. Now, I'm not saying that spitting in the Quran or flushing it down the toilet is the right thing to do. As far as fostering communication, as far as fostering dialogue and trying to clear up misunderstanding, I find that to be counterproductive. Once you do something like that, then people are not as likely to take you seriously and they're not likely to pay attention to what you have to say. But I celebrate their right to do this sort of thing, and I can understand why. So I hope this explains a little bit as to why they might be doing this. It's not just that they want to insult people for the sake of insulting. It's the fact that they despise the possible abuses that they see coming under Sharia law. This has been the Masked Analyst, under an N.